Conversations with Elders, hosted by yours truly, Louis-Virie Blanche, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432, where we will be TED-talking in tongues with the elders of all ages, all generations, all races, cultures, and creeds. All gender, religious, or political preferences will be honored and encouraged on Glastonbury Radio 432, Conversations with Elders, where it is our treasured pleasure to roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light to you in honor of the Queendom Come, soul dancing free to life's heartbeat drum, in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, priestess, goddess, friend, sharing the blessings of love's perfect stranger, Deja Vu, welcoming you to Glastonbury Radio 432.
It's too cosmic, much too cosmic for me. Much too cosmic.
Aloha, hola, aho, hello. This is Louis-Virie Blanche, and you're listening to Conversations with Elders. And we hope that you will be filled with a blessing of incomparable grace by participating in what we have to share with you today. And I'd like to say that here on Conversations with Elders, we roll out the red carpet of golden liquid love light in honor of mother, daughter, sister, lover, warrior, priestess, goddess, and friend. And my beloved guest today is Dyan Starr, who I believe can cover all the aspects of divine femininity, the mother, daughter, sister, lover, warrior, priestess, goddess, friend. Somehow, even if it seems to me in writing your book, you say you've been writing a new book on numerology, right?
Yes, I have. It's been a journey.
And that process has actually put you through an initiation of sorts with each of the 78 archetypes.
Absolutely. I don't know why, and it cracks me up, and this is the second time, as you know, that I've written my book. The first time I went through and quickly, and it just didn't sit right. So I had to go back and do each one individually, one at a time. And while doing that, I went through each one individually, one at a time. And in the process, I came across some huge, beautiful initiations about forgiveness, about poverty, about self-worth, about confidence. And all of these just kind of hit me at one time. And so I'm realizing what a blessing it was. And then you asked me about the first part of my book. I was trying to get that needed to be rewritten too, because somehow it went missing. And so I'm realizing I have some more initiations to go through. By that, I mean, I have stuff to learn. And because of that, I'm better than I was. And it wouldn't have happened any other way. It was phenomenal. But the forgiveness was the number one. And so I'm not sure if I could share the story or not, but you just stop me. Otherwise, I keep talking.
No, I think we should share the story. And what I wanted to share with the foundation of the story is that we were brought together, and I want to dedicate today's show to our beloved Barbara Colgan, who was the caretaker, and you might say the stewardess of an incredible spiritual family. And what I'm remembering that Barbara told me about earlier in her life was she had been hospitalized by her husband, I believe is a story.
Oh, wow.
And she said that while she was in the hospital, she did a forgiveness process of forgiving everyone she could think of. Wow. And shortly thereafter, the director of the hospital she was in told her that, he said, Barbara, you don't really require to be hospitalized, so I'm releasing you. And so what I gathered from that story was that she was having this Kundalini awakening.
Yes.
And the people in her immediate life thought she had lost her mind.
Yes.
But she hadn't lost her mind. She had really gained her self-remembrance.
I think enlightenment sometimes tends to also look a lot like insanity happening, because people stop caring about the external, and that throws off everyone around them. So, you know, insanity, enlightenment, they're pretty closely linked.
Yes, yes. Well, there's a fine line there. We always talk about how amazingly inventive and inspirational people are, but a lot of people that are very creative, they walk a very thin line between sanity and insanity. And it's perhaps that they can dip their toe in this insane side without losing themselves to it completely. They get little doses of it. But I do want to say
And part
that,
of our journey is to lose ourselves. Absolutely.
had it not been for our beloved Barbara transitioning, we probably wouldn't be sitting here talking as we are today,
I wouldn't
because
know.
there was a FaceTime call that I missed because I was driving. And when I stopped and was trying to get back in touch with that FaceTime call, you came up on the call without any of the other participants.
That was strange. I noticed
Yes.
that too.
And
I
the
was
very
like, "Where's
first
everyone
thing you
else?"
shared with me was Barbara's Trinity of Inspiration. Now share that with us again. Barbara taught us these three most important factors.
Oh my gosh, I love this, Louis. It's my favorite. She is, to start briefly with, my teacher about love, and my 100% all the time source of unconditional love.
Yes.
So with that said, the lecture, well, not lecture, wrong word, but what she would tell me repeatedly, and thank God she did, it saved me all the time. She said, you have 3 jobs in this lifetime: unconditional love, unconditional forgiveness, and gratitude in everything. And that's it. And she's right. So
Yes,
and
indeed.
I would tell her repeatedly how often I quote that. And that's thanks to her. And she's right. And the moment I took that in and believed it, it helped me transform my life. It helped me connect with you. It helped me connect with my book. And this is a perfect place for me to tell you my personal story about the forgiveness, if now's a good time.
Perfect.
In writing my book in particular about the forgiveness, and this year has been my personal 18 year. 18 means the moon. So when we are in, and we all have this year come up every so often. So the moon year means whatever is in your subconscious, especially the deepest, darkest places and fears, want to come up and be recognized, embraced, and healed and released. So that being said, it can seem like very traumatic. And one of the things that was interesting was Audrey was asking me, my daughter, she said, Mom, well, what are you afraid of? And I've gone through a lot of emotional work. So I've reconnected with the fact that I have worth. And so I thought about it a lot. And I said, you know what? Poverty. And then right after I said that, Louis, I had a month again this year where 6 things happened to me financially that were totally unexpected, of where you owe this, you owe that, you owe this and that. And it was kind of funny. And in the process, there was a lawsuit I had regarding my house. And I literally realized, because it shows up in our charts too, a theme that I have of poverty and how it wants to come up about, for me, every 9 years. Some of us, it's every 7. For others, it's every 9. And for some of us, we choose personal relationships that show us, wait, I have worth. Sometimes we choose like a narcissist or someone who doesn't understand our worth, just so we can be aware of it. But for me personally, and for this year, my healing was to, first of all, realize how to stop that cycle. And I felt like the victim here. So I literally contacted my attorney and I said, just send the money back and tell them I forgive them. And he's like, that's not how it works, Dyan. But I was able to release that all and break away from that and embrace what I thought was poverty, but I learned a lot about my self-worth. And now my pattern is I've let go of the need or the desire or the expectation of what I thought should be coming my way. And as a result, I have far fewer things and items material-wise, and I'm so much happier. I never thought this. I used to be addicted to shopping, Louis. And now I'm realizing that was part of the pattern, and needing to go into debt, getting a little money, needing to go into debt. And I don't need that cycle anymore. And that required massive forgiveness. And I even sent an email to one of the people I was suing asking for forgiveness. Haven't heard back and don't need to, but that was my personal journey thanks to Mommy Barbara. So I had to share that story. It was huge. And my daughter was like, what? That's crazy, but it seems right. So do it. So I've been doing a lot of crazy stuff, Louis, that just seems right. So there you go. Thanks to Mom.
What would the world do if all the attorneys out there in the courts said, my client chooses to forgive you?
They'd have to find a new profession, Louis.
The judge and jury would say, wow, what does this mean? We no longer have to have this trial? You've resolved this issue?
Absolutely. And I had a brilliant therapist share with me a chart, and it was very simple. And we literally take on these different roles. There's the perpetrator and there's the victim. And we take on both roles in whatever, like in our personal relationships, maybe we're the perpetrator, maybe we're the victim. It doesn't really matter. But unless and until we finally have a moment where we realize that we are part of it, that we do have power to forgive and stop that pattern, then it continues lifetime after lifetime, or every 9 to 7 years. And thank God we have reincarnation, so we can take enough lifetimes until we go, oh, wait, I don't have to be the victim anymore. This is a role I'm done playing. So thank you, other people who are playing a role in my victimhood. I release you and I forgive you and thank you. That was thanks to Mommy Barbara, Louis. And that was, it transformed my life to now, every day I try to look at that petty part of myself, or the part that's trying to be a perpetrator or a victim. And whereas before I had no conscious awareness, I thought stuff is just happening to me and I'm a victim. Now it's like, wait a minute, I have a role to play. And then I use numerology to see when did this happen last? How often is this coming up? So that's been my gift from Mommy. Yeah.
Well, when people think of numerology, do numbers talk through the archetype of that specific number? Does a number have this? There's 78. Is it true that you have 78 numbers that you are focusing on in your book? And
Absolutely.
Those relate to the 78 archetypes in the standard traditional tarot deck.
Absolutely. We can't have one without the other. As you know, they're all connected. And you pick a day that you're going to be born, you pick your parents. And if you choose a different day, it's a completely different energy, just like an atom. You take one molecule out of that and you completely change its properties. So we all have something we came to learn, something we came to share. And there are definitely several major numbers. You have a heart number, personality, destiny. And these are all part of the archetypes, the 1 through 78, and including 0, because 0 represents God and divine guidance and protection. So all of us have 4 major numbers that the moment you were born, you're holy and you're doing sacred work. And in your name and your birth date reveals what that work is. And you ask for certain challenges, you ask for certain karma, and you know what your spirit has come to experience, like, why was I born? And that's easy to see, and that represents those archetypes. And those archetypes are powerful, and they really help us because we get to choose. Before we're born, we choose. So our path is clearly set, and we even have 4 pinnacles, 4 major learning time frames of our life, the school we choose to be in. So when you break that down with the simple math from numerology, you can see, what is it I need to learn for this time period? And what am I sharing? So yes, the archetypes are so important, and tarot is a beautiful discipline. I have respect for all of the different disciplines, like astrology and tarot, all of that.
So does something like the moment of your birth, does it kind of start a wheel in motion, so to speak?
Absolutely. You actually know when you will be born and the circumstances that you have chosen to be born into, and your parents. And the spiritual path number, I love talking about that you get from your birth date. And when you add that up, you know exactly, that's the deepest number with the most spiritual aspect. The other numbers will represent your material plane life or your personality or your business, but the birth date is your spirit, what you came to give and receive and learn in this lifetime. It's beautiful. So with just a few simple calculations, I add it up, and then you know what that number is. In fact,
So
I brought paper.
when people are coming to you, do you start with their name and birth date?
Always, always name and birth date, and in particular, the very first name you were given at birth, because that lays the blueprint. And if you don't know what that is, like I have a friend who was adopted, I go with the first original name she knew of, and I did that for her. But the first name you have sets the blueprint. And then for women, a lot of times a woman, she'll change her name to a married name, and that just adds extra elements. Or like Samuel Longhorn Clemens changed his name to Mark Twain. So we have different, and some of us want to take on different assignments, more than one in one lifetime. And
Now,
so,
if you looked at Samuel Clemens and did a numerology chart on that name with the same birth date, with the name Mark Twain, I mean, have you done that, for instance? Have you done that type of comparison with people and to see that this is their birth, the name that was on their birth certificate, but this is the name they used? Because what it reminds me of is there's a lot of people that have names they use for their company, themselves as actors or musicians, or just your name. Like today's world is all concentrating on branding. It's like what you call yourself as your brand. But I didn't know, for instance, Nancy and Ronald Reagan personally, and I didn't know John and Yoko personally, but I've heard that they were just two couples that were very, very adamant about getting their numbers done in terms of when they were starting businesses or naming things. And I believe this is not something that just
I would love
people
to
do.
jump.
I think a lot of very developed and educated people understand the power of numerology.
It is absolutely true. And there are the basic main 1 through 9. Of course, I go up to 78, so it's even more detailed. But if you want to start something, you want to do it in a 1 year, or 28, which is also a 1 energy, or 37. And they all are the 1 energy, but they also have slightly different elements. So it helps if you don't, as a numerologist, limit yourself to 1 through 9. And if you try to start something in a 9 year, it's not going to last. The 9 year says, I have finished a cycle. For example, in the 9th month of pregnancy, the baby just sits in there and gets fat. There's nowhere to go, just waiting to be born. So the 9 is not the time to start, but it's the time to celebrate everything you've learned from the previous 8 years, 8 up to 9 years. So if you want to start something, you do it in a 1. If you're finishing something, and it's a 9. And what I love to do with my clients as well is I will ask them, what was a significant date for you? When did you meet a significant other? When did you give birth to a child? When did you get married? And for me personally, a lot of my relationships, Louis, I started at a 9, which means unfinished business. So there was, and then 9's dramatic. It has ups and downs and highs and lows. And it's like, I'm on cloud 9. And then the next time it's like, oh, how could I have picked this person? What was I thinking? So, and I remember in particular in an 8 year starting a relationship, this person had a lot of money. That relationship didn't last, but it was a beautiful connection briefly. And 8 is more like personal power. So everything you do has a specific significance for when you do it. So these people are very smart. And I did not know Yoko Ono also went to get that guidance. So I give her credit for that, because it makes a huge difference. When you're in a 1 year, you know it, because there are some very specific things that happen in a 1 energy. One is about the 1. You tend to have several things going on all at one time. And because the magician is the ruler of the 1, and he's creating something new, and he just doesn't stop creating. And it gives you a lot of extra energy, which is very powerful, and it needs to go somewhere. It's like if you just gave birth to a baby, and there's so many different directions to go in. And during a 1, you can start and create something that will last long term throughout your life, or even beyond your life. And for example, when I have clients who said, I'm tired, I just can't get up, I don't want to get out of bed, a lot of times they're in a 7 year. There's 7, there's 16, there's 34, there's 43. all the different elements of the seven. And the 7 year, I tell people, you need to take it easy, because the seven represents the number of chakras. I know we have more, but the basic seven of our body for chakras. It also represents shutting down and slowing down the physical so that the mind can take you to other levels of consciousness. And then you get downloads. So when I see someone has a 7 year, and I had a dear friend once, and she was saying, I'm so excited, I'm going to be in a marathon. And I checked her chart. It was like, well, you have a 16 year. Can you maybe just walk it? And she's really beautiful. And she's like, what are you talking about, Dyan? And she ended up, this doesn't happen. It doesn't have to happen in 16 years. So I'm not saying this to scare anyone, because there's nothing scary. She broke a bone in her hip and she couldn't even be part of it. And she said, it's your fault. I'm like, no, you're having a wonderful year, but it's not for your physical strength. It's for your spiritual gifts to come out. And that was, so she calls me every so often to find out when it's time to go into the marathon. And 8 years is great to be in a marathon. I've never been in one. No, I have great respect for those who can. I'm not about to, but that's, you do a marathon in your 8 year. You do not do a marathon in your 7 year. Your 7 year, you need a spiritual sojourn. And so you need more meditation. You need to not be around people. So it's the opposite of the 6. So if you're in a 6 year, it's time to commit to someone, like for love, for long term. And if you're not committing to a romantic partner, you're committing to raising a child, or you're committing to yourself to something long term, like a college degree, or something that's a long term loving commitment. And that's what we do in a 6. It's about family. And a lot of times in a 6 year, we find that family, loved ones, and relatives need to move in with us, and they need to lean on us, particularly if it's a 33. That's a master number. So the 33, you will find yourself, such as Mother Teresa, helping to protect those younger or older than you, or you might adopt someone in a 33. And so there's extra responsibility. So I really like what you said, Louis, about those other people who would refer to a numerologist, because when I look back in my life at significant events and I know the day and I can do the calculation, I'm like, oh, well, that makes a lot of sense. So I understand in retrospect, especially. So I like that you said that. Mm-hmm.
Well, you know, Dr. Flanagan, the pyramid researcher, I don't know if you knew who Dr. Flanagan was.
No,
But
I would, now I have to do his chart.
He was, when he was 9 or 10 years old, he entered a science fair in Houston, Texas. And it was separated into different age categories, but his contribution to the science fair was a guided missile detection system. And so he won all ages in the Houston Science Fair in 1958. And he went to school that next Monday, and the FBI and the CIA were in the principal's office asking him to come and have a talk with them.
Oh my gosh.
And they wanted to know how he had developed this guided missile detection system. And he said, I did it in my dad's garage. I did it at home. So when I met him, like I forget, later on in life, Life magazine said that when he was 17, Life magazine said that he was one of the top young scientists in America.
Wow.
So, you know, he's 9 or 10 and he's inventing something that just boggles everyone's mind. He also had invented a device called the neurophone, which was like a big amplifier type stereo piece of equipment. But it had these diodes, these wires that had diodes on them that you would place on the temples of your head.
Wow.
And it used the skin as a receptor for sound.
For healing.
But it also had other attributes that he couldn't really explain to the patent office. And because they couldn't understand it, they weren't going to give him a patent for that neurophone. And so the FBI and the CIA people had given their business cards. And they said, if you ever need us, you know, give us a call. And if you ever need a job, we'd love to work with you. So he couldn't get his neurophone patented, and he called them up. And the story goes that the person he was talking to, he's asking for these higher ups in this organization, the FBI and the CIA. And he's just a young kid. they sounds like pretty young person. And they said, well, sure, we'll give him your message. And he wasn't sure if they were going to do it or not. But in fact, they did. And they worked it so he could apply again for a patent. Because the story goes that if you are denied a patent, they don't allow you to reapply for the same patent.
Oh, wow.
So he was given permission to reapply. And there was a person in the patent office that was deaf. She had never heard before. She didn't have hearing. And they demonstrated the device on her using her skin as a receptor for sound. And the first time she heard music was that moment. And she began to weep.
Oh my God, I would too.
Just inspired her to feel so graceful and profound blissfulness and thankfulness that she was just weeping. But Dr. Flanagan had a thing about the number 7.
I was just gonna say that, oh my God, we have to do his chart. You know what?
He would pick P.O. boxes, street addresses. He was very particular. He goes, no, I needed to be a 7. He was very adamant about that.
To jump in there, I'm so excited about what you told me. And now if you have his full name or birth date or any part thereof, send that to me, because the 7, interesting. I remember doing a chart for a woman, and she worked with the deaf people, and her destiny number was 70, the number 70.
Mm-hmm.
And so with what you're talking about with him, the 7 can hear and see what the 5 senses or the 6 senses do not. So the 7, and in fact, when you're talking about someone that gifted, Louis, I'm so excited. And what I have learned from some of my teachers is that, and what your gift is shows up in your heart number, by the way, the vowels you choose. It takes at least 5 lifetimes of studying the same subject to then be like a natural, because who you're talking about sounds like some other people who are like born brilliant. And that doesn't come from nowhere. It's not like, oh, that person's just lucky. No, it's not. It's not random. That person has studied lifetime after lifetime. And then they come down here to share it as a beautiful old soul. And I would like to add another name in there, Samuel Hahnemann, because I love homeopath remedies. Mm-hmm. And Samuel Hahnemann is the father of the homeopathy. And back when he was doing his remedies, there were hospitals for whatever the big disease was going around, and the disease was killing 90% of people in the hospital. And he had his own where 90% were living, and he had a karma of 7. So meaning there wasn't a G, P, or Y in his name. It was his karma to literally bring homeopathy to the world. So he would literally make himself ill and then find the remedy to cure himself. And he did this repeatedly. So I want you to, some point later, send me the information, because this just excites me, because you're talking about someone at a level who can hear, see, understand, and communicate with things that the rest of us don't necessarily have that gift for. And it's healing. And the different energy levels, it just excites me. So yeah, I'm gonna need that information from you. Mm-hmm.
Well, I will be sending you numbers, because, you know, I've been going through my notes. I've attended a lot of presentations by people like Dr. Flanagan, and I've read and studied a lot of like Buckminster Fuller's work. And these are 2 examples of people that were futuristic in their ideas and innovations were light years ahead of what other people were thinking about, much less actually doing. But they knew, Buckminster Fuller knew, that many of his patents wouldn't even be understood for years.
The Grunge of Giants, I love that. And I read that, and he literally knew, and he would, in his book, he said, just what you said, this one will not be accepted, and this one won't either. And sure enough, the plumbers unions, the electrician unions got together to ban and make illegal what he was sharing, because his was not going to make a certain few wealthy. And his is on my chart too, my list now too. I have to do his chart, because that's just absolutely fascinating.
Well, you've got to hold that thought. Okay?
I will hold that thought. I'm holding the thought.
Have you held on to that thought?
Yes, yes.
Well, when you mention Grunge of Giants, I have to tell you that on this planet, I think there's almost 8 billion of us on the planet right now.
Right.
And I fell in love with Buckminster Fuller sometime in the early 70s. I wasn't into him. He was very much like the guru of, you might say, the 60s. He was very popular back in the day, but I just wasn't interested at that time in his work. And then I discovered him, and I had the audacity, my first album, one more second.
Okay.
Dr. Flanagan, Patrick Flanagan gave me permission to use the censor symbol on my first album. It's called the Sun Song album. But this symbol was something that Dr. Flanagan allowed me to use with my music.
Oh, wow.
And I was traveling the world, and he was lecturing with Sheldon Deal, who was a chiropractor, who was a president of the Applied Kinesiology. He and Dr. Flanagan were traveling a lot. And I was like a sponge. All they were talking about had to do with the understanding of energy and principles that we're speaking of now, like archetypes and resonance, the basic quantum essence of reality. But when you mentioned Grunch of Giant,
what you just showed me.
Go ahead.
Yes. I was going to say, what you just showed me, that beautiful image that you have permission to use.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, yes, that exact one. There is someone, and I have to see if I can find her name, but I specifically, yes, that is stunning, who literally makes images that look like what you have, like a mandala, a woman, and I'm not sure if she's still around, and I'm not sure if I still have some of her pieces, and she will send you like what you just showed me, something like that, but super small and on plastic. And she a whole list of different ailments and different energy challenges, and depending on the one that you would muscle test for would be the one she would send you. And it came with instructions like, look in the middle of this for a certain number of seconds per day, so for the healing. And so there's sound and there's visual, and what you showed me looks like it clearly has like a portal effect, but for a higher level of consciousness. And
now this one is called a pyramid.
Wow.
And this has a number 108 is key to this particular. These are 7-sided, the little things on here are 7-sided pyramids.
Wow. And there are 108 of them?
Yes, I'll send you like this pyramid was designed by a Dr. Mosen with Dr. Flanagan. Dr. Flanagan, this design he had designed sometime in the 70s.
Wow.
But what happened was sometime in 2000, I want to say maybe perhaps 2003, early 2000s, he got together with Dr. Mosen and he wanted to update this design. And the pyramid is what Dr. Mosen designed.
I have a question for you, Louis.
Hmm?
What do you, that is beautiful. And I am suspicious in a really exciting way. How does that affect your energy for you to just have it around your neck? I'm curious about what you notice.
Well, Dr. Flanagan called this device a magnetic form resonance device. Form can have resonance if you use specific dimensions, specific colors, a specific number of things. Everything can enhance the design. And Buckminster Fuller called it design science. He called it a different name. And he saw, and one of the things that happened with Bucky, he looked at nature. He saw that nature had certain preferred patterns, preferred number systems. And now with the Hubble telescope, with the Hubble telescope and the Webb telescopes going out farther than we've ever ventured in the galaxies, we're seeing that same spiraling pattern that was inherent to Earth that Buckminster Fuller utilized in inventing his geodesic dome and all the various inventions and patents that he was involved with. what's interesting is that when you mention the Grunge of Giants, this album is Social Security album. And it's got these
Whoa.
Fibonacci numbers of 1, 2, 3, 5, 8, 13, 21, the Fibonacci
Yes.
series.
Yes.
But I
Wow.
called Buckminster Fuller. I didn't know Bucky, but I called him and I said, you know, I love you. I love your work. And I'm so thrilled. I was reading Grunge of Giants.
You got to talk. Cool.
I sent a message through his secretary. I called his office. I said, I don't know Bucky, but I wanted to get permission from him to use his work with my music. And the secretary said, hold on a second,
Wow.
What's your name? And she came back and she said, well, Bucky says, whatever you'd like to use, it's fine. Just give him credit for whatever you use and wherever you use it.
That's amazing. How many people actually say that? What a beautiful thing to share.
But guess what I chose?
What?
I chose a quote from Grunge of Giants.
Okay, I have to hear this.
And I'm such a Buckminster Fuller advocate. I'm
Yes.
always talking about his wonderful innovations and ideas. And I'm always asking people if they've read this book or that book. And Grunge of Giants was the last book that he wrote.
I did not know that.
And lots of his books were encyclopedia thick publications, very, very dense, because he wrote from a stream of consciousness. He didn't really take notes. In fact, when he went to give lectures, he would just allow the inspiration to speak through him and manifest spontaneously.
Wow.
But he was a fluid, you might say, a fluid source code. What I've told you before, he was taking dictation in the high courts of creation.
Yes, he was.
And he was
Ironic.
taking very
I was the
meticulous
court
notes.
reporter.
But it starts off saying, never before in all history have the inequities and the momentums of unthinking money power been so more glaringly evident to so vastly a large number of now literate, competent, and constructively thinking all around the world humans. There's a soon to occur critical mass moment when the intuition of the responsibly inspired majority of humanity, in contradistinction to the angered Luddites and the avenging Robin Hoods, face with comprehensive functional discontinuity of nationality contained techno-economic systems. Now that's a big word for Bucky. Nationality contained techno-economic systems are basically governments or corporations that unto themselves have a system and you might say a corporate culture.
Absolutely.
When that corporate culture gets to the point of not sustaining itself, not being syntropical, it becomes entropical. Entropy is greater and greater disorder. Syntropy is greater and greater order. So synergy is more beneficial than energy.
That makes sense.
Syntropy has more value than entropy. And when we understand the principles, these are the principles that nature uses. What Bucky was saying here is that the groups of humans that will understand this intuitive information will call for and accomplish a world-around reorientation of our planetary affairs. At this critical moment will occur a realization by the responsibly inspired majority that the adequate capacity of the invisible technology to sustainingly support all humanity depends on all the resources, physical and metaphysical, being always and only employed for all of the world around humanity as a completely integrated techno-economic system operating entirely on its daily income, principally of sun emanating energy. So Bucky was saying in that first paragraph that humans were going to wake up to such a point that they would no longer want to participate in entropic systems that create more and more disorder. And we would see that it's important to follow the guidance of Mother Nature, Father Sky, and the cosmology of existence, which for some reason has these numerical principles, even in the formation of our bodies. even in the formation
Yes.
of the Earth and the galaxy and the infinite galaxies that we're discovering.
Yes. And I kind of, oh, go ahead.
But Grunch of Giants was the quote. And you are one of the very few people. I mean, I can't even think right now of another person that's even mentioned this book to me.
He was ahead of his time, clearly a beautiful, I would, old soul. I know that word gets used a lot, but he just came down for pure love, and he never had in his mind, I want to gain money and power. He just wanted to be of service. And how beautiful is
Yes,
that?
yes.
And I want to add on to what you just said, because, and that was beautifully said. I don't think like that. That is really awesome. Mine are simple. And what I have from what you were saying, I literally think he's talking about the year 2000. And so, and I say that because, and I know we've shared this before, but the moment we went from 1999 with the one is I am the magician, I am the masculine, and everything was masculine dominated. And then when the two came, 2000, the year 2000, the two brought the 3 zeros are divine protection and guidance, but the two is the high priestess, Louis. And what you were just reading on there says like exactly what's happening. During a two energy, the high priestess, she is not a sexual creature like the empresses. So a lot of people are not even having sex or babies now. And she's kind of wanting to be alone and isolated, which kind of sounds like COVID. But what he was talking about awareness and people not wanting to be a part of this, we finally, because we have this technological advance, the good part about it is, well, now you and I can communicate, and the people who are 1% can't stop us from saying what we believe is our truth. What is also good is #MeToo brought to life a lot of things that were kept secret. So our high priestess, and in combination with what you're saying, will now bring out secrets that have been held and kept, and all these groups or cults, they now can't do anything in secret because everyone has a phone, everyone can share it. And we finally, with the two also, we get a lot of piercing of the veil. I also have a beautiful shaman who I love, and she was saying, Dyan, for some reason, there are a lot more portals open. And so it's a portal is neutral. What can come in and out of it, and if there's someone guiding it, it can be a positive one, but if there's not a guide there, you never know. So there's an equal amount of much higher negative, destructive activity, as well as positive, powerful, beautiful activity. And this beautiful one, for those of us who choose, we've noticed since the year 2000, I'll go into this briefly, the moment 2000 hit, we seem to have gone back to being a teenager, Louis, as if we thought, oh, I'm done, I have my career or I have my relationship, but then somehow I think I might be going through bankruptcy, losing my career, or my body doesn't work, or my relationship ends. And that's not a punishment. It's saying you're going to a higher frequency. And if there's anything that you needed to learn from this or to finish up before fifth dimension were to happen, it's going to happen now. So it's like, I thought I was done with this. Why am I back into this phase? It's not a punishment. It's an awakening for the higher frequency. So like if you're a rocket ship in NASA and there's one little particle that's missing, the whole thing will explode. So I like to think of our own human bodies and our own emotional experience and spiritual progress in the same way. The higher we go of our own level of consciousness, the more we are asking for any little tiny thing to come forth so that we can acknowledge it, forgive it, like Mama says, forgive, and unconditional love and gratitude. So anything that has been like swept under the rug, nothing can be swept under the rug anymore. It all wants to come out. And that's not a negative. That's you're finally ready to wake up and have the healing. So I'm so excited that you pulled that out, because the Grunch of Giants, I loved that. Oh my gosh. I was like,
well,
this man's ahead
it
of his
was
time.
available online for free for a while.
Wow.
The Buckminster Fuller Institute actually made it available, and it was his last book. I don't know if you know this about Bucky, but Bucky was traveling. I think he was 87 when he, or maybe he was 83 when he passed.
Wow.
But he passed in 1987.
I'm going to have to do a chart for the day he passed too.
Because he was traveling doing his lectures, because I guess you know that early in their marriage with his wife, he and his wife had a baby that died very young. lived only to be like a few months old.
I did not study his life. I'm going to
And
now.
he was very, very depressed over it.
Yes.
And he made a decision that he would have his jobs. He had his job wired shut so that he couldn't talk.
What?
But he had to drink
Wow.
and eat out of a straw for a year, because he made a vow that
Wow.
he would seal up his ability to talk. And for a year he did this. And then he made a vow that he would only speak when he was asked to speak. And when he
Wow.
spoke, he would not say anything that he hadn't had a firsthand experience of. So he made that vow, and his work blossomed. I mean, they had another child and their life went on. I mean, he was suicidal. He was very depressed. He went through a lot.
Understandably.
And he had money to go to Harvard, and I think he spent all his money, and he never went to Harvard. There's some stories about him meeting these dancers in New York and taking them all out on the town for a few days or something. But he spent his tuition money.
Thankfully.
But intuition is a feminine trait, is it not?
Absolutely. And that's not putting down a masculine at all. It's just these are the archetypes we have, because we all have this. And also part of the year 2000, people talk about time travel, and that happens too. And then sometimes in our reality, we get little glitches. Like we might wake up and realize our reality is slightly off from what it was the previous day in little tiny things. And that's just part of us becoming aware of there's something far deeper where we come from and why we're here. And the two likes to have secrets. She likes to veil. And when she thinks you're ready for it, then you get that little wake up call, and then you have an awareness. And for me, that happened in particular with emotional patterns. And so I was able to wake up and go, oh, I keep doing this, and this is a pattern my mom did. So it's time for all of us to, especially with genealogy now coming forth, and we all get to find out who we really came from. We get to do healing work on ourselves, and that goes back at least 6 generations. Anything you do to step out of an old pattern when you choose love is healing 6 generations back and at least 6 generations ahead. You affect your DNA every time you choose love, forgiveness, and gratitude. Mommy Barbara says, thank you for that.
Yeah.
Oh
so
my gosh.
This process of all of us individually and collectively evolving,
yes,
was foreseen by Buckminster Fuller in his work. And people like Dr. Flanagan and the people that we've spoken about, others that are receiving these gifts of inspiration and innovation, and they are applying it, and they're doing it as a service to others. Because you mentioned the gentleman that was working with holistic healing or homeopathic healing.
Samuel Hahnemann, the father
used
of
himself as a guinea pig, right?
Yes, he did. It was his karma, the 7.
Well, that was one of Buckminster Fuller's. He had a book he called I Am Guinea Pig B. He called himself Guinea Pig B. He goes, I see myself as a guinea pig, and I am giving myself to be the first to be tested with these ideas and innovations that are coming to me.
You're giving
I'm
me
not going to try them on others. I'm going to do them and learn them myself.
I'm literally feeling in what you said. That's the power of Christ, the death and transformation, like clearly ascended master, literally offering his entire life in service and taking on everyone's karma, and then the death and transformation. Oh my gosh, that's exactly what that sounds like, what you just said. Like these people at a certain level, they're like, my life is a beautiful gift that I get to share. How can it help you? And that's just, oh, I love that, what you just said. And speaking of,
we're going to continue this. You'll look at Buckminster Fuller. You can look at Dr. Patrick Flanagan. And we mentioned earlier, William Blake. We can look at these people and see what their numbers say about what they lived out in their lives.
Send me whatever names you want, and within 10 minutes, I have the calculation, and we can talk about anyone in depth who you want to. Another lovely thing I love about doing that is sometimes people come to me who have lost a mom or dad, and then they'll have me do the chart of a loved one that that they get to kind of connect with. But absolutely, these people are inspiring. Another one I would love to do and talk about with you is Emoto. You're probably aware of him.
Yes, yes.
With the water.
Mhm.
And also we are in the 2000 year. Two represents, the one was big and the macrocosm, but when we get two, we get the microcosm, like tiny diseases or how words and frequency affect things.
Mhm.
And Emoto was able to take pictures of water with just putting a word in front of it.
Phenomenal.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So, we all have this energy available to us, but depending on what word we choose or what thought we have, the thought and the word focus that energy through, and that's what we get to have as a result. I'm so excited to finally connect with you like this.
Well, I saw something today that said with compassion, intention, and gratitude, there was 3 or 4 attributes, but without anything is possible with compassion, intention, gratitude, and forgiveness. To put that type of, those energies are subtle. They're not something that, you can write the words down and perhaps the letters in the word might have a message.
Yes.
But to understand what love means and to see what it means, like when Dr. Emoto takes that 4-letter word and has it affect the consciousness of water, we're seeing that this, like you said, the subtle energies are more active now than ever before.
And that's why it even, I see that in numerology, we each have our own name. Well, that's our assignment. That shows what we've been anointed in. And Emoto would literally, as a test, he picked a particular body of water. I don't remember which one. And it was not a clean body of water like lake or stream. And remotely, they did a before and after. They had someone go and test the water before the prayer. And then he had his group online say a prayer, and it was just very simply what I remember in his book: I love you, I thank you, I respect you. And that's all they sent out. And then he would have whoever was there at that body of water tested after that, and it literally changed the formation of crystal. And that's powerful. That's when I realized we get to choose our words and what thoughts we want to have in our, it just, you literally change like the makeup of your DNA through your choice.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed.
Yes. And when
Well,
you have a choice, you're not a victim. I love that.
In your journey with words, how did you come about knowing that you had this talent with numbers?
I love this. When I was born, my name was Roberta Joanne Schlender. And I was about 3 or 4, and Mom changed all of our names. And I then became Dyan Markham. And then she married my dad, and his last name was Starr. He said, "You want my name?" I'm like, "Absolutely, Dyan Starr." So I've been Dyan Starr since I've been about 5 or 6. But then, Louis, as you get older and wise, at the wise old age of about 8 or 9, I said to Mom, why did we have these name changes? And she said, blah, 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 numerology. And I'm like, what's that? And she said, "Oh, you're too young to know." That set me off, Louis. And she had books. I'm so grateful to my mommy. She had all these books. She had about more than 10 on numerology. So because she wouldn't tell me and she said I'm too young, I had to prove it. It was a point of contention of pride, Louis, because I was like 8 and I knew everything.
There you go.
So, yes, I'm like, yeah, like what can you tell someone who's 8, 9, or 10? That they're like, I know it all. So I pulled out all of her books, and what got me hooked was the first book I opened. First of all, it's the simplest math you'll ever do. And then secondly, it was so easy. And then I realized this is really true. And then of course, at that tender age, I'm like, it's all about me. And so from that age on, I couldn't put down a book on numerology. And I have read over 40 or 50 books on numerology. And about age 15, I was sitting with someone who was very old, Louis. She was 30. And I did a quick little chart. Of course, I've improved much since then with what I know. And I remember telling her, you have a lot of ones. So in your relationship, if he's too clingy, it's not going to last. And she was like, I can't believe a 15-year-old is telling me this. So people started calling me, and I kept doing this because I couldn't stop. And then Louis, my little method, it came from God. It just came from God. As every single book I've seen says, you take any double digit, for example, the number 78, and you have to break it down to the numbers 1 through 9. And I went, why are we breaking these numbers down when we have these powerful archetypes, thank you, Tarot, that express and explain even in further detail? And when I had that, that came from God. And then Louis, I literally had a dream that showed me this beautiful blue light. I call it Archangel Michael, that's just me, this beautiful blue light coming down and touching my hand that had a book in it that said Tarot. So from that dream, I'm getting chills now. I was told, you're going to write a book, and it's going to be your simple method, and it's combining the tarot with the numerology, because then instead of just saying, oh, I'm a number 9, well, what kind of 9 are you? If you're an 18, that's the moon. There's a lot of dark depression and mental health issues you want to experience and help to heal, which is completely different than a 27, which is far more creative and artistic. So once I made that connection, it's like, you have to write your book. So I am, and it's almost done, and I'm excited. So that's what got me started, to give you the long answer.
Do you have a title for your book? What's
Yes,
the title
I
of your
do.
book?
I'm so excited about this, Louis. It's called Hallowed Be Thy Name.
Well, that's it for here and now. But until we meet again, this has been Louis-Virie Blanche thanking you for listening to Conversations with Elders on Glastonbury Radio 432. Bless you.
Quantum physics in the kitchen sink, the energy that follows the thoughts you think. Quantum physics and the cosmic sea, laws of nature too heavy for me.